If you were to ask me what the best Saints Row game was in the entire franchise, I'd simply reply back with Saints Row 2. In fact, I'd probably take it one step farther and say that in a lot of aspects, this game is actually better than GTA 4. But unfortunately for the series, Saints Row 2 would be the highest heights it has ever reached, because everything afterwards, as you probably know, has been a downward spiral. But what you might not know is that this downward spiral actually began with this game. But if you want to know what I'm talking about, you will have to wait until the end of the video. For now, please join me as we take a look back at this masterpiece. There's an old saying that goes like this: don't fix what's not broken. It's a saying that developers seem to ignore more often than not. Instead of trying to fix something that isn't broken, you should instead try to build on it, and that is exactly what Saints Row 2 did. They didn't undergo this major change that made Saints Row 2 drastically different from Saints Row 1, like we've seen with Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4. Instead, they kept the same gameplay formula that people love. The story of Saints Row 2 takes place 5 years after the events of Saints Row 1. The player wakes up from a coma caused by the boat explosion at the end of the first game and quickly learns everything he once knew was gone. The Saints were no more. After the explosion, Julius went missing, Troy turned out to be an undercover cop who is now the chief of police, and Dex now works for the corporation who has made Saints Row their new home, Ultor. With the Saints' leadership in shambles, anyone still belonging to the Saints dropped their colors when the new gangs moved into Stillwater. As the player, or as the boss, as we are now called, it is our job to reform the Saints and to take back what we had claimed in Saints Row 1. We get a set of new lieutenants, a new hideout, and new gangs to go up against. Like the previous game, we have 3 mission paths to go down: the Sons of Samedi, which are a drug-dealing gang, the Ronin, which is sort of an offshoot of the Yakuza, and the Brotherhood, a gang led by muscle-brain tattooed man that underestimates the Saints all the time. Like the first game, each one of our lieutenants are in charge of one of these gangs. One of the things that I do find funny about Saints Row 2 is that there's a certain scene wherein the boss is given his assignments to his lieutenants, and it actually mirrors the scene when Julius is doing the same thing in a Saints Row 1. I'll show you what I mean.
Listen up, people. I got some serious shit to discuss. Yeah, we cleared out the road. You think for a second that's gonna stop them? Unless we wipe all these motherfuckers out, they're gonna keep coming. And they ain't gonna be happy. It ain't gonna be settled until the Canales, the Rollers, and the Vice Kings ain't nothing but a memory. Dex, you got the Canales. Ever since they hooked up with the Colombians, it's like they own this town. And with that drug money rolling in, we can't compete. Be smart how you move against them. The Lopez family been running that gang for 30 years. There's a reason they still around.
Got it.
Troy, you dealing with the Vice Kings.
Not a chance.
Fuck you say?
Anyone but them.
We listen.
All right, everybody listen up. We got some serious shit to discuss. The Saints used to own Stillwater, and it seems like the only motherfuckers that remember that is me and Gat. I think it's time we give those other crews a wake-up call. Now, I ain't gonna lie, a lot of shit's changed since I've been out of the game, so I'm gonna need some help. Pierce, you on the Ronin. I wanna know who's calling the shots and what businesses they running.
Done.
Shawnee, you got the Sons of Samedi.
It's gotta be them.
Fuck you say?
One of the many things that Saints Row 2 built upon was the storytelling. Throughout these missions, we get to see and bond with our lieutenants. We learn that their personality is not just trying to be a badass. Unlike the characters in the Saints Row reboot, instead they have their own quirks and insecurities. Carlos is a young man who had helped the boss break out of prison. He isn't very confident in his own abilities, but the boss assures him that it'll turn him into a gangbanger even if it kills him. Shaundi is a tactician. She has a vast array of contacts that mostly consists of the men that she has slept around with, and without her, the boss would have had a lot harder time taking over Stillwater. Despite this though, she isn't very useful in combat, and you can see how it gets to her in the game. You have Pierce, someone who comes off as overconfident but is constantly trying to prove themselves. Mostly because he keeps getting shown up by Shaundi and all the guys that she has slept with. Pierce is the type of person that will whine, and in all honesty, if the boss was to be betrayed, I would have to say it would be by Pierce. And of course, we have Johnny Gat. Johnny Gat's character is way more fleshed out in this game, and after saving him from being sent to prison, that showed us one of the funniest scenes in this game.
It really should be closer to 250.
There's no statute of limitations for murder.
Why the fuck not?
Watch yourself, Mr. Gat.
Or what? You'll hold me in contempt of court? You're already planning on giving me the chair. You think I'd give a shit about you not liking me? Fuck off.
I'm curious if you can keep your cavalier attitude when 2,000 volts are running through your body.
Oh yeah? And I'm curious if you can keep acting like a douchebag when I shove that gavel up your ass.
My client would like that stricken from the record.
We learn exactly what had happened to the Saints' leadership. Johnny Gat, although still a gun-blazing psycho, has more or less settled down with Aisha, one of the only people that he actually cares about. The Johnny Gat we see in Saints Row 2 doesn't only look more mature, but he comes across as it also. Most of all though, the game actually makes us care about these characters, makes them feel human without compromising the badassness that they have surrounding them. But this doesn't only stop with our game, as they did the exact same thing with the gangs that we face. The Sons of Samedi control the jug trade in Stillwater, and money is their very top priority. If you screw up, the leader called the General may just call for your hand or your ear. It is also with their story that we see that you can have goofy elements in a Saints Row game while also keeping a serious tone. As when we were dealing with the General's right-hand man and Mr. Sunshine, he uses voodoo against us and keeps coming back alive no matter how many times the boss shoots him, which eventually leads to the boss cutting off his head. The Ronin, as mentioned before, is an offshoot of the Yakuza. It is led by the Oyabon son, Shogo Akuji, and the game deals with things such as illegal gambling and protection rackets. Now, if you ask me, this is the best story in the entire game as it shows the more human side of Johnny Gat. After a series of attacks on the Ronin finally decide to strike back at the Saints. They break into Aisha's home and hold her as a hostage with the hopes of ambushing Johnny and the boss. But before they entered the house, Aisha shouted a warning which resulted in her having her throat cut and dying. Johnny is wounded in the ongoing fight, thanks to the boss telling him to get out of the way so he could shoot Shugo's right-hand man, and is put out of commission for a while. We also get the only scene in the entire series where Johnny offers mercy to someone. Shogo shows up with his men at Aisha's funeral, determined to kill Gat for making him look bad in his father's eyes. But Gat tells him to go home, that he isn't killing anyone at Aisha's funeral. Shogo didn't listen, and it resulted with him getting a good old beatdown and being buried alive. The game, it did an amazing job portraying Shogo as a victim of sorts. All he wanted to do was impress his father, especially after some of his earlier decisions, yet it resulted in an early grave for him. And then we have the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood led by Mirror, a monster of a character that drives a monster truck. Initially, the boss and Mirror meet on good terms with the proposition of a deal that was regarding a shipment that the Brotherhood was about to get. The only thing is, Mirror didn't think all that much of the Saints and only offered them a 20-80 split, which saw the two gangs go to war. And this story branch gives us more than a few memorable scenes. After the boss messes up Mirror's face, Mirror's girlfriend kidnaps Carlos, chains him to the back of a bumper, and drives around Stillwater with him still attached to said bumper. The boss eventually stops the car, but it is too late. Carlos is in too bad of a condition, covered in blood, and unable to move without screaming. The boss takes out his gun and puts the young gangbanger out of his misery. This action leads to the best moment in the entire series, with the boss kidnapping Jessica, stuffing her in the trunk of her car, and then driving the car to a monster truck rally Mirror was participating in and watching Mirror crush her. And finally, there is Dane Vogel, Altair's spokesperson. Altair had a plane, and that plane was to use the gang warfare to buy property for dirt cheap. The proper term for this, and I am probably going to butcher the pronunciation on this, is gentrification, which is when rich people buy property in a neighborhood, invest a bunch of money in said neighborhood, and pretty much drive out the poorer residents due to them being unable to afford to live there any longer. Altair's plan was to drive the gangs towards certain neighborhoods, and then when all this gang warfare was going on, when the property value decreased, they would come in and buy it and do some good old gentrification. I know, I probably pronounced that wrong again, do not sue me. Dane also sends Alter's forces after the Saints, and he ends up regretting it just a little bit, as it ends with him getting a bullet to the face. Now, you might remember how I said that the problems that we see in the later games actually started with Saints Row 2. Well, I lied. Sort of, because it happens in one of the DLC and not actually the main story. In Corporate Warfare, we team up with another Alter executive to get to Dex, after Dex lures the boss and Julius to a theater to kill them both. In all honesty, the DLC, it is a bit underwhelming as there isn't really a lot of story, but the ending of this DLC seems like it was meant to set up a sequel, and that wasn't the Saints Row 3 that we actually got. At the end of the DLC, Dex flees Stillwater, with the boss saying that he will track him down and kill him. To me, it feels like this was initially supposed to be the premise of Saints Row the 3rd. We go to a new city to find Dex and kill him, all the while expanding the Saints. But we see that didn't happen. In fact, the ending of this DLC is just kind of thrown out the window. And the problem with this is that the downfall of the series is when the Saints teamed up with Altor. And if we follow their storyline where the Saints hunted Dex down, that never would have happened. But I'll talk more about that in my Saints Row 3 video. But what do you guys think about Saints Row 2? Do you think it's better than GTA? Do you think it is overhyped? Let me know in the comments down below. These videos, they do take me a bit longer to do, especially this one. I had nothing but trouble with it. So if you can hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell, it just might save a little bit of my sanity. Hope all you guys have an amazing, wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.